All right. Well, first off, a big thank you to everybody that is here. My name is Mark Jameson, and I am the Chief Development Support Officer for Propel Brands. We are presenting this seminar with the IFA and the Diversity Institute and the Pride Council. My good friend Paul Pickett, who is here, and myself started the formation of the Pride Council in September of 2019. And then I think we all know what happened in 20 and 21. So we're very excited to be reinvigorated now with COVID behind us and in-person meetings. And we are felt that Pride Month was a great month to really be able to talk about pride and what pride means and what diversity means to everybody. And today we've got an amazing panel of folks that are going to share their stories and talk all about why pride is important and all of that. But real quickly about me, as I mentioned, I'm the Chief Development and Support Officer for Propel Brands. We are the franchisor for Fast Signs, Nerds to Go, and My Salon Suites. My partner and I have been together 15 years, and it's just so amazing to be able to celebrate pride and talk about it. I'm so thrilled that IFA is allowing this opportunity and so thrilled by the response we've got. This session will be recorded. So if in fact you don't get to all of it, or if you want to share it with a friend, it'll be recorded, it'll be sent out, and it'll be on the IFA's YouTube channel for anybody to listen to. I'm going to have the panelists now introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their backgrounds and maybe why this is important to them. And then we're going to get into some great conversation. So I'm going to start with Brett. Brett, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell your story?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Larimer. I'm the Executive Director of Brand Development for Skyhawks and Supertot Sports Academy. We are a youth sports program franchise with over 10 different sports across the United States. I'm excited to be here sharing today. I am really lucky. My wife and I actually just got married back in August. But I'm lucky that I work for a company who not only supports my wife and I, but actually celebrates us. They throw us an engagement party, and just a company that recognizes love is love. And I feel comfortable and safe and included at all times. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm here, why I'm on the Pride Council and trying to make a difference so that other people within the LGBTQIA plus community, but really any community, can feel that same sense of support and celebration.
That's awesome. And congratulations, Brett. That's awesome to
Thank
hear. I
you.
did not know that. So, Patty, what about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Patty Rother. I'm the president of Frios Gourmet Pops. We are an emerging brand, mobile-based concept. Our franchisees sell really amazing gourmet hand-poured popsicles out of a tie-dye van that happens to be rainbow. So just super fun brand. And we talk about just spreading happiness on a stick everywhere we go. And my wife and I, we live in Colorado. We've been here 15 years together. We have a 6.5-year-old and another one on the way in about 3 weeks, which is really exciting. So hopefully she comes on time because the first one waited very long. And I'm just happy to be here, part of the Pride Council, similar to Brett, just making sure that we create more and more safe spaces for everyone to show up fully as they are. A lot of you have heard my story, but I stayed closeted in the franchise world for a long time, thinking that that was what was acceptable. And it's just been amazing since making sure that kind of everyone knows who I am and the embrace that I got from the franchising community. So just wanting to provide that for more and more people. So happy to be here.
That's awesome. And Paul and I are excited to have you both on the Pride Council and many others as we continue to expand this and get the message. And it's all about conversation. I'm now going to go to my good friend and the co-founder of the Pride Council. As we were walking around IFA going, there's got to be other gay people and we don't know who they are. Let's start the conversation. So Mr. Pickett.
Thank you, Mark. You never cease to make me laugh out loud. Thank you for your friendship and stewardship over the years too. My name is Paul Pickett. I'm the Chief Development Officer and Executive VP of Franchising for Wild Birds Unlimited. So proud to be here and so excited to see so many people attending. Wild Birds Unlimited, over 350 brick and mortar backyard bird feeding specialty retail stores. We bring people and nature together and share the joy of engaging with the world around you and specializing in backyard bird feeding. I've been here for a little while, about 33 years, So it's been a wonderful run, and personal, I've been with William, actually, it's nice to look out here and say a bunch of you guys know him. For 27 years, we've been married for 2. It was the longest walk up the aisle forever, but wanted to make sure it was going to be right. I wanted to take my time and not jump into things. So we laugh a lot about that. I was very lucky. I joined a brand, Wild Birds Unlimited, that embraced who I was. It made me feel safe and comfortable from day one. It took me a couple of years before I felt safe allowing them to make me feel safe. But it was great. It was amazing. Jim Carpenter, who's our founder and CEO, basically said it doesn't matter, and you need to be true to yourself, and you need to be true when you're telling other people. So don't keep this to yourself if you're asked. It's an important part of who you are. And we're retailers. We serve everyone. Doesn't matter where they come from, what their background is, who they love. We serve everyone. So that's what I expect. So I had a very safe, comfortable, wonderful experience here with my brand, but I too was very cautious in franchising and kind of hung back for many years until I got old and exhausted and just said, you know what, I am who I am. And if I can't be authentic, I can't actually give back the way I'd like to give back. And so I no longer kept it a secret. And then a couple of years ago, actually, Mark and I were talking and just said, it is hard. It's not necessarily obvious who is in this community, and we all need to band together. And we've got so many amazing allies. It's good for franchising for everyone out there to know that it's a safe space. So whatever that is, whether it's gender fluidity, who you love, what your background is, what your gender is, what your religion is, what your color, race is, all of those things just need to be open. And actually, we were having a meeting the other day, and I said, won't it be nice when you don't need to have a Pride Month, and won't it be nice not to have a Pride Council? And my friends, they caught me on this, and they said, you know what? We may someday not need a Pride Council, somebody advocating it, but we'll always need Pride Month to celebrate it. And that's exactly true, because celebrating diversity is important. Even if equality is in place, I think part of that equality is celebrating diversity. So there you go. I'm here. I was sort of helped produce this and got all the speakers. And we were, William, I know him as Billy Rodriguez from Silvercrest, was going to be a speaker, and he unfortunately has laryngitis. So sad for him and sad for you. You get me as on the panel today too. So.
Well, we're thrilled. Love you, love William, and so excited to be on this journey together. We're all going to tell a little bit about how our companies have done this. As I said, this will be recorded. Please put any questions you have in the room, and we'll try to take as many questions as we can as we get to the end. We're each going to have a little bit of content. I'm going to start a little bit about, what we've done. I share both Patty's story and a little bit of Paul's. Which many may find hard to believe, but was closeted and working for a number of companies where I wasn't comfortable, and I felt really like I couldn't be fit into what was the mold. And when I came to Fast Signs and I interviewed with Catherine, now it'll be 13 years ago, it was quite clearly to me that I was going to be welcomed and embraced here. And every year, I'm so thrilled that when we plan our executive team dinners, we make sure they're planned so my partner can make it and fly in for them because he lives in a different state. And it's just so nice to be at a company that embraces it. But a lot about what we're going to talk about today, though, is Pride Month and how we all celebrate it, and I think in diversity. And so for us at Propel Brands, I think our biggest achievement for me personally and for the company is that last August we formed a Diversity and Inclusion Council. And to us, that was really important. And I think, as Paul mentioned and others will mention here, that diversity is about so much more. It isn't just about LGBTQ, there's mental health, obviously every various group. And so we put together a very diverse group of franchisees that we're sort of a cross section. And it's really been good. And I think, while not everybody has embraced it, maybe as we'd like, most of our franchisees have embraced it and have been very excited about it. We're going to wrap up today with a video project we did. But what I love about it more than anything is it's about the conversation. I think that when you can talk about diversity, when you can talk about pride, when you can talk about any group, that you can at least have the conversation. And in today's day and age, while it's interesting, it wasn't our goal. Many of our franchisees said the way we may sell this to some people is make sure they understand two things. It's really good for business to welcome everybody. As Paul said, you don't know who's walking in your doors. You don't know who they represent and who they don't represent or what group they're in, obviously. But it's also good for hiring employees. Your employees want to have a place to come where they can feel welcome. You heard three of us on here tell that story about how we worked for places where we had to be maybe behind the scenes and in the closet, and we didn't necessarily feel comfortable. And I feel comfortable coming to work every single day. People ask about my partner and how we're doing. And, it's wonderful to really be able to share that experience. And I never imagined growing up, I'm old, that there would be a day where someday we could openly talk about our relationship and share friends and things of that nature. So I'm excited about that. For Propelled Brands, we have not done a lot in terms of pride for our franchisees. We certainly have shared overall the Diversity and Inclusion Council, why it's important, who it's important to, and that we want to broaden the tent, if you will. And that stands not only for people we welcome as new franchisees, but it also is for our existing franchisees and their employees. When we had our Pride Council launch in September of 19, I think Paul and I were both blown away by the attendance we had from both allies, which are just as important to the LGBTQ community, as well as there were employees of some of our franchisees that showed up and came, which I was so impressed with. And they were like excited because now they felt like they also could be welcome and talk about their husbands and their wives and their children that may be LGBTQ. And I think that's important. So, I think for us, forming the Diversity Inclusion Council is important. We have done it with fast signs. We want to broaden that a little bit across the brands. And I think we will continue to develop that and share that story for everybody. We have about 8 members on that council, and we meet several times a year. We did an amazing presentation at convention, which we'll talk about. And the reality of it is not everybody loves it. We know there's still a lot of hate out there if we look at what happened this last week. But I think the more we talk and the more that people realize that we're just like everybody else, no matter what group you're a part of, I hope that people can love that. And for those that can't, well, I won't say anything on that. I'm going to run to Brett now and let Brett talk a little bit about her story and how they take care of things at Skyhawks. Brett?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Skyhawks has been busy the last couple of years, especially as it comes to really investing time, energy, and resources just into increasing diversity, inclusion, and equity in our company, but also awareness around that. And it actually began a couple summers ago after the murder of George Floyd. We got together, a few of us, and realized we wanted a safe space just to talk about how we were feeling and what was going on. It started with just a couple people that actually turned into a book club we all read. So you want to talk about race, and started working through some of the tough conversations and concepts that are brought up in that book and what we can do to be better. And this group that originally started as just a handful of people has grown since then, and our goals and our missions have grown since then. We started talking about the different buckets that we have operationally. We're a youth sports camp company. We have campers, we have coaches, we have our franchise owners and the coaches that work under them. And we also have all of our community partners. And we started talking about it. It's our responsibility to find ways to make sure that each of these business buckets are getting the time and attention they deserve, so that at every level, people feel comfortable and included. We knew we couldn't just Hail Mary and go gung-ho right into, speaking of Pride Month, rainbow everything. So we dialed it back, and we were also really, really intentional about making sure that we were doing the work internally as a company instead of just sharing about it externally. We had a lot of conversations around performative allyship and how that was not our goal at any point in time. And so what we actually did was we started internally. Instead of sharing things, we invited someone to come in and do a workshop about unconscious bias. It was a really easy first step to get people to start looking inward at their own thoughts. From there, we grew. We're in the franchise business, right? So you can't just skip to educating the entire company and changing the entire company. You have to start at the top. You have to start with your executive team or your leadership team. And then once you start getting that group on board, it's about, okay, now how do we educate our franchise owners? Because they're the ones that are going to be educating your staff and your employees at that lower level. So when you're thinking of initiatives or way to change things in the company, that was how we went about it. We did this top-down approach. We said, all right, it doesn't matter what changes we make to our policies or our training for our coaches. If our franchise owners aren't implementing those same things, then we're still hitting a wall. So we started with the workshops. We made them optional, open to anybody. Since we started that first unconscious bias workshop, we've had workshops and trainings around identity, around discrimination. We, at our latest emerging franchise conference, we actually had the Spokane NAACP chapter president, Kiampa, come and speak, and she shared a lot about the business side of things, right? I can talk to our franchisees all day long about, hey, love everybody because it's the right thing to do, but to have an outside resource come in and say, hey, you could take everybody's money if you just be a little bit more inclusive. It just kind of opened the door and it turned things back to the bottom line, which we're in business. That's what we all want to focus on. And so finding these different assets to bring educational outside resources in to start educating your staff, what it does is it's a slow burn. It starts changing minds. It starts opening hearts and minds. And what we've found is people who maybe weren't so excited in the very first workshops are now the people who are thanking us with the new workshops that we do today. That same group has also split into some subcommittees. So in addition to this educational component, we've also spent time working on our curriculum and our training for our coaches. We did a survey that very first year out to our coaching staff across the entire country and said, are you, as a staff member, are you comfortable? Are there issues or things that you want to bring up that we need to know? Are there issues that are taking place at camp? And what we started finding were some common themes. The kids that go through our programs are elementary and kindergarten age. There's so much the kids don't know. And so a lot of times they were repeating things they were hearing at home or asking questions that maybe the children didn't understand were offensive or discriminatory. But it still has that impact. It's still hurting other people. And so we knew that we needed to make sure our coaches had the education and the training to at least be aware that these conversations and these questions could come up. One of the most common feedback responses we got was actually kids who didn't understand why someone had two moms. Okay, how can we prepare our coaches to navigate that conversation? And so really my point here is instead of just externally sharing, it's also important to take stock of what your company is doing and make sure that what you're sharing externally is also reflected internally in your business. Are the franchisees that you have feeling supported and safe and included? And I don't mean included like, yeah, they're part of the group. I mean, just as they are, they included. Again, we're youth sports camps. It's our responsibility and our privilege to make sure that every single child that comes to our program feels safe and accepted and included. And so that's where we really realized that instead of any one particular month of celebration, what we needed to do is focus on this concept of inclusion 365 days a year. And what that's done is open the door for a lot more conversations. Any of you keep up with sports news in this country, there's been a lot of legislation and conversations around transgender and non-binary athletes. We're non-competitive. It really doesn't totally affect us at the younger level, but we do have kids who are exploring their gender identity. So how can we make them feel safe at camp? How can we, again, prepare our coaches and our franchisees to normalize pronouns and be comfortable with that? And so by taking this multi-step approach, we've kind of snowballed our inclusion efforts. We now have our full equity committee with subcommittees, and it's allowed us to expand our reach. So we now are doing more external efforts. We're doing things like this Pride Month, sharing resources. So parents, 10 books to talk to your kids about Pride Month and the history of that and what that means. And it's really just opened the door for us to have more conversations as a company. The workshops have allowed us to humanize one another. I think that's something else that's really, really important, and humanize your customers, and having this conversation around, we're just trying to get everybody to a point where they can listen to understand, not necessarily listen to agree. That's not what we're asking them to do, but listen to understand this environment and this culture we're working really hard to try and create. Still a work in progress, but that way, at least we've opened the door. People can do as much or as little as they want to. We have some franchisees that are asking us to learn more, and then some of them are smaller scale, and maybe it's just a single individual. I know, like, I personally in my email signature have added she, her, just so that every person I email knows I'm a safe space. And that's just me personally within the company versus the company as a whole. But again, what can you be doing personally and as a company to make those internal checks and balances so that what you're sharing externally matches that as well?
Awesome. It's clear why we are thrilled to have you on the Pride Council. You obviously, you've got a lot going on there. I have a quick question. If you know it, you can answer. We can follow up. It just says, could you share the speaker you utilized to start the internal conversation? Because I also thought that would be great. Somebody's asked that question. Do you recall that person now that you can share with us? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, so the very first unconscious bias training we did was actually an internal, our parent company, Stack Sports. They created one sort of specific to the sports technology world. Like, for example, there's a section on microaggressions and, oh, technology's so easy, your mom could use it. So that sort of realm, but it was actually based off of an unconscious bias workshop that Google ran. So my recommendation there would be to research unconscious bias trainings. In my personal experience and a lot of conversations I've had with people, something about starting with the individuals and helping them recognize that is just the, I guess, most accepted or like simplest first stepping stone in that conversation. And then from there, that's when you've opened the door to start having more vulnerable conversations at work. So whether that leads into, race, gender, disability, and even like for us, it's, things like scholarships or programs, all that kind of stuff. But the first step is to get people to understand that they have biases that they aren't even recognizing, because it will soften and sort of change that conversation.
And I think it's so important to say, how do you have those conversations? I know when we formed the council, it was the same thing. It wasn't just about LGBTQ or Black or Hispanic. We added mental health and we added veterans and other things to it, because it's, it is, diversity is really, obviously should be welcoming to everybody. So thank you for that. Great share there. I am going to move to Patty now, who was going to talk a little bit about some of her previous employer and what they're doing today at Frio's Gourmet Pops. So Patty, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Brett. Thank you. That was amazing. I was captivated the whole time. So you guys kind of heard part of my story, but one of the companies I worked for back in 2018 was actually a company called Blink Fitness. It was a New York City based, low cost, high value gym concept. Started in New York City, but then franchised and was really coast to coast by the time I left. We had about 200 gyms across the country. And it was part of the Related Companies, which is just a larger brand portfolio that includes Equinox and Rumble and SoulCycle and some others, mostly all fitness brands, but across kind of all platforms, boutique and big box. And when I was there, one of the things that struck me, it was actually the first, and I think the only at this point, company that really did have action behind their words. So they had already policies in place that protected LGBTQ plus folks within their company when I joined. So something as simple as like including domestic partners in your benefits package, or making sure that gender affirming medication and services are part of your benefits package as well. They had all these incredible things in place when I got there, which is one of the main reasons I ended up joining that business, was because I was so impressed with what they had already built. But in 2018, when Pride Month came around, they did a really incredible campaign at that time. It was called the Be You campaign. And we were in New York City. So at the time, there was a whole Vogue scene happening with that format of dancing. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but there's some pretty awesome videos out there. And what I found so incredible was just how bold and how loud the campaign actually was. It was featuring gay men, gay women, trans folks, drag queens, all kind of strutting their stuff through our gyms. We had emptied out our gyms and did a whole photo shoot, and they all were kind of like dancing in and around the equipment. And it was definitely bold. And me as a gay woman, like, felt kind of nervous about it because I had been in places all over this country where something like that would just be beyond offensive and would, cause rioting in the streets sometimes. And so having the campaign run coast to coast, I was scared for the company a little bit to know, like, how is this going to be in Kentucky where a franchisee is and it runs on social media, and they're going to see, a trans woman in very high heels strutting down between our treadmills, dancing in their Vogue way. So what was really incredible was how they ran this campaign. So instead of just turning our logo rainbow and supporting the LGBTQ community the way that they already were, what they did was really amplify these voices and give visibility to a group of people that otherwise wouldn't have a platform or as large of a platform. What was really incredible is we did this campaign across all of the sister brands. So Equinox was doing something similar, SoulCycle was doing something similar. So really utilizing those platforms across the country. And again, the visibility and amplification of those voices was so powerful. What they also did is we had apparel in all of those concepts that was created by a New York City designer that was part of the LGBTQ community. And for every piece of apparel sold, we were donating memberships, and each company kind of had their own company or nonprofit that they had partnered with. And Blink at the time partnered with the Gay Men's Health Crisis Center, which is pretty big in New York City. And so for every piece of apparel sold, we were donating memberships to them. And then we had this huge gala ball at the end of the month. It was called the Latex Ball. All of the folks that were featured in the videos came. We had shows, we had a runway, and it was really, really incredible. It was a huge benefit event. So tons of donations came pouring through for the various nonprofits. And it was just an incredible thing to be a part of, especially part of the LGBTQ community, and seeing multiple companies really step out and be super loud about their support and allyship. During this month, they, marched in the Pride Parade. They did all of that as well. But for all the employees within the company, if it hadn't been clear to that point, it was abundantly clear that you were welcome here, no matter who you were, that it was a safe space. And we did things all throughout the year. So not just in June, but all throughout the year, we were doing various things with local nonprofits and partnering as much as we could. And it was really that first time that I had seen an organization kind of on the far end of the spectrum of support, right? Where not only are they, having classes and making sure that it's clear that everyone's welcome, and maybe adjusting their benefits package internally, throwing a rainbow on their logo during June, but it was really this extreme side of, not only do we support NCU, but we're going to continue to give a platform and a space to these marginalized folks who otherwise may not have that opportunity. And I just remember being so blown away by that. Right now at Frios, where I'm president, we're definitely challenging ourselves to figure out, what does that look like for our brand? We're small, we're emerging. The original founder definitely had deep-seated values based in Alabama, and very different from kind of where we've evolved to this day. But a lot of those original franchisees bought in because of those values. And so trying to figure out, how do we shift slowly and really become a company that is inclusive and allows everyone to be who they are, without doing, the performative allyship, which I personally just can't stand, right? Like, we don't want to have just a pride post go up in June and call it a day. We want to be a company that's really known throughout the organization and throughout every level for being open and affirming and true allies of anyone who joins. And that's really from a full D&I perspective. So how do we do that? How do we formulate messaging? What do we put out there in the public? What do we create internally? And that's really the conversations we're having. And I so appreciate, Brett, just all of what you said, because you all are so far ahead of where we're starting right now, which is deciding, we don't want to be on this side of the spectrum, which is we don't acknowledge pride at all and don't really bring it up and just kind of let it be any other month. We're not quite ready to be Blink Fitness either. And so how do we kind of step into this in a way that's intelligent, right? And not rushed, and considers everyone who's already in our business, because we want to do this well. So that's kind of the conversations that we're having at Frios. And it's been really exciting and fun to have those conversations, be able to build kind of what we desire for this company and talk to those who have kind of already been there and paved that path for us.
Well, Patty, again, we're thrilled to have you, obviously, for obvious reasons as well, in the Pride Council. You're a great contributor. I have a question for you. We're kind of in the same boat where we've got, Fast Signs, we have 780 locations. Not every market adapts things the same way. And we haven't done anything particularly on social media and stuff. We have the council to have the internal conversations. Did you have pushback? And is there anything you're willing to share when you did, even at Blink, where it was part of the culture? Was there pushback, and how did you deal with that? Because I think that that's always the thing that franchisors are concerned about. If I'm going to go out and say, hey, here's what we should do, we would let our franchisees decide. But if you're going to start making those moves and saying, you got to do this, I'm just curious, and don't share anything you can't, obviously, but I was just curious as to how you dealt with that, because I suspect you did.
Yeah, absolutely. There is pushback. And I think when you're willing to be bold, the way that Blink Fitness was willing to be bold, you have to be prepared for some of that. I think what was really interesting was Blink was always really, really clear. Obviously, well, at the time I was on the franchise development team, so I was the one bringing new franchisees in. And during the sales process, we were always abundantly clear. Like, this is our culture. This is who we are. This is what we're about. Blink was the gym for everybody. So it was very clear, like, we embrace diversity, people of all shapes and sizes, colors and races and everything.
You know that when you buy into the brand, right?
You know that, yeah. So hopefully it was abundantly clear. We did have a franchise group in Middle America that did not want the Pride campaign running in their market, and Blink owned all the social channels. So franchisees didn't have their own pages. It was just one national page, and it would run in all of their markets regardless. And we actually ended up terminating that group because of their resistance to running something that was so important to the company. And it would have been the same for any other campaign. I mean, we did a ton around Black History Month and Juneteenth and, Women's International Month. So it wasn't anything specifically around LGBTQ. It just happened to be that was the campaign that kind of pushed them over the edge and said, I refuse to allow you to let me put this in my market, because you're just
deep values that says about the company to say, we're not only going to require it, but we're going to stand behind it. And if you don't want to apply it now, if you know that when you buy into it, that's one thing. So that's fascinating. And I appreciate you sharing that story, Patty, and you sharing your story, which is also amazing. So thank you.
Of course.
We're going to now move to Paul. One of our franchisees who I love to death, Carmen Ruiz, who's on here, has given a couple of resources. So Carmen, I'm waving to you and love you. She is on our Diversity Inclusion Council. And she's talked about at it is called MUMA, College of Business, which I think is interesting, actually has a diversity and inclusion certification that she got. And you can take online classes and you get a digital badge. And there are some amazing classes here on, emotional intelligence, stereotypes and biases, recruitment and retention, sustainable business model, all sorts of things. And I think as we're all looking for resources, we have some classes we're looking at that are kind of canned on our university, but this may be another great way to take a look at this. So Carmen, I appreciate you, love you, and thanks for sharing that information with everybody here. I'm going to now roll to my good friend, Mr. Paul Pickett, to tell his story and talk a little bit about Wild Birds and what they're doing. And and then we'll go to questions. So Paul.
Thank you, Mark. And just to everyone, we will compile all of these things. I think Michelle asked for the link, and we've had other things that Carmen have put out there. And I've got, thank you to Jason from Skyhawks, I think, put out the link to the workshop leader. We'll pull all of that together and send that out to everybody. So we promise to do that follow up. And then before I get started, I'm also going to ask a favor as the co-founder. If anyone here has ideas for future webinars, educational thoughts, challenges that you would like to find out how other folks are managing through, please send those to me or send them up to someone at the IFA. We'll get it. You say Pride Council, they'll come to me eventually. But my email is pickett@wbu.com. So it's just my last name followed by my first initial at WBU, wildbirdsunlimited.com. Because we're always trying to find new ideas. And I will share actually at one point an idea that I have that I'm trying to make work for a webinar probably in the third quarter. But I'm going to first kind of speak, because I wasn't supposed to be here, but I'm going to speak for William Rodriguez. Most of you know him as Billy Rodriguez, who is the co-founder and president of Silvercrest Advertising. They're a full service marketing firm, but one of the things that they have always done is had and most of us who are franchise stores have this, a marketing platform where we have our logos, our images, our templates, so that our franchisees can maybe, like for us, they can change the offer on the deal. They can, they maybe change the bird for us on the promotion, but we have a template and we have locked and loaded down their use of the logo and the brand. And he was going to talk a little bit about why it's important, even if you, like Wild Birds Unlimited, but we're not doing big system-wide, brand-wide promotion of whether it's Black History Month or Women's Month or Pride Month. Having the collateral in place for those franchisees who really in some ways want to and in other ways need to. I mean, if you're in Palm Springs, where Mark has a place, you would actually almost be penalized if you weren't celebrating Pride and if you weren't making a major, because the community expects it. It is part of what they want to have in that community. And as a brand, if you're not producing that and providing it, that I'll be honest, we don't, and we need to. For whether it's Pride Month or any other major celebration, you need to make those decisions. But he was going to just talk about the importance and the challenges associated for brands that he works with and his company works with, who then have that franchisee who's trying to do a good thing and ends up messing it up and really, compromising the brand, which is, as we all know here in franchising, is the most important thing we have, right? It's our most valuable asset. I was going to talk a little bit about Wild Birds Unlimited and what we've done, which is very similar. And I think we're going to get on a path, I'll call it the Brett path, of starting internally, because as an older brand, 42 years old, we have a mission, vision, and values that we go over with every new person who comes into our system. And one of our values is that we embrace diversity. We didn't have that in place ages ago. And there is the challenge that a franchisor does have is you do own the brand, right, as the franchisor, but your individual franchisees own their own businesses. And you have to you just have to be thoughtful about that. And how do you manage through that so that you don't have that inherent potential pushback, as Patty talked about with the Blink Fitness franchisees, or I think Mark mentioned it too. And so what do you do? And how do you manage through that? We are in the process, we had talked about a DEI council, which we want to do and we're going to do. And one of our FAC members brought it up saying, we need this in our system because it has to start organically. We've got great success in breaking through the LGBTQ plus community of diversity in our system. We've got more female franchisees than male franchisees, so we're doing well on the gender. But we aren't great at all on race, at racial diversity within our system at all. And we need to figure that out and how to address that. But what we want to start doing is doing it organically, starting internally and then slowly going out. What I think one of the reasons why we do have a strong LGBTQ plus community within the Wild Birds Unlimited community is very early on. We went from spouse to partner on our application. We feature gay and lesbian franchisees in our marketing, and I made it very comfortable. And for many, many years, I was the guy that everyone talked to, right? I mean, that's happened. And the second I got even a remote inkling that may be an issue, I brought up my partner. Which, I mean, I've had franchisees say that made me so comfortable. I was so nervous about what was going to happen. Would this be an issue or not? And you picked up on those subtle cues and maybe hesitation to talk much, you know, little things like they no spouse, but they talk about, I have a roommate, you know, who will help. One of the things you always want to make sure is that an individual who joins your franchise understands the fact that the first year is going to be tough and that they need to have a supplemental income because they may not be able to pull it. And so just addressing it up front and proactively, changing your franchise agreement language, making sure that it doesn't talk just about spouse, that it talks, you know, and get the words husband and wife and or domestic partner. Get that changed so that it's an organic comfort zone. We still have a long way to go, but I think those are some of the subtle things that we can start doing and then bring it up a notch and a notch and a notch and a notch, so then we can go out system wide. Like right now at Wild Birds Unlimited, we do have some rules. Social, you don't talk about anything other than birds and nature. And that is kind of a safe spot, right? So the only thing we talk about is that habitat preservation, birds and nature. So it has been a little bit insulating when people say, well, we should be doing more of this or more of that. We're like, you know what? That may be true, but right now what we're focusing on is just birds and nature. But we would like to get to a point where we can stand behind some of these more, be on the right side of history and be supportive of this diversity, both internally and externally. It reminded, Brett, when you were talking, it reminded me so much of a line from the most recent presidential inauguration where it says, we'll lead not merely by the example of power, but by the power of our example. And, you know, we do have the power to do what they want, right? I mean, we heard about it with Blink. We have the power to say, you're out if you don't do it. But none of us want that unless we have to, right? We want to engage and bring people together collaboratively so that they will want to do it and they will see the value in it, not just, I mean, the easy sell is the financial value, but also the being on the right side of history value too. So
awesome, Paul. I always love listening to you and love your story and all that. So thank you for sharing. We're going to go to questions. I'll say a few things on what Paul mentioned. You know, for us in the Diversity Inclusion Council, we did that I didn't get a chance to mention is, you know, number one, as Paul said, we changed in our application to say partner, so it could be reflective of it was not just narrow. We also track various groups, and on our application we added LGBTQ to Black or Hispanic or Asian, so that we knew that when we had PR opportunities or opportunities to share, we could pull if they were willing to share. And the other thing that was something that was a huge gap that we wrote with the Diversity and Inclusion Council is our job boards didn't have a diversity and inclusion, that we're a welcoming company and all of that. And if you're going to hire people, you need to have that in your ads. And we actually looked at other companies. We worked with Ursula, who is the chair of the Diversity Institute, and she gave us some great language. And we actually came up with standard language that our franchisees sadly could optionally choose because not all wanted to have it. And we linked it in with Career Plug. So I think there's lots of ways we can all do that. Let's look at a couple of questions here. Cassidy is asking, in what ways can your supplier partners support your diversity and inclusion efforts? I think that's a great question. I don't know that I've got an answer to it, specifically anything we've done. Has anybody here done anything to include on this panel with their partners that you can think of, suppliers, and how they might be able to step up? Anybody have thoughts on that and how you may have done that in the past or in the future? All
I
right.
can, oh,
Yeah,
go ahead, Patty.
Yeah.
You know, one of the easy ways is if you are going to do something donation based during any of these celebrations, right, where you're celebrating one of the diversity groups, you can reach out to those suppliers and see if they want to match or help and kind of make it a bigger impact if possible. And I also think one of the things I've seen in the companies that do really well on this front is before even inviting a supplier or vendor to be part of your company's resources, making sure to have these conversations before you even agree to partner with them, so that if you're trying to be kind of that true ally through every level of your organization, that it includes your vendors and suppliers, and make sure that they're aligned with that same set of values that your company is, because they think it's so important and can sometimes backfire if you're not asking those questions. If you say, you know, we're all about this, and then the public finds out that you're either using a supplier who, you know, might be supporting anti-LGBTQ legislation or something, and that can be a whole media shitstorm. Sorry for my
Well
French,
said.
but it's true. So making sure that if your company is really going there, just really evaluating all of those partnerships and making sure that they're all aligned.
The only thing we've done, I would say, and then I think maybe Brett, you had something you wanted to add to it, but the only thing we've done that I did think about wasn't specific to diversity, but at all of our conventions, we like to leave the community a better place than we got it. And we get donations from various vendors and suppliers. And then we have a day where we assemble bikes or food and other things. And I think you could do something like that as well to tie into various communities. This worked well for us, and our franchisees actually participate. We take the dollars that are donated by vendors and suppliers, and we build kits we did bikes for a certain organization. We've donated gift cards. We've done a variety of things. So certainly something like that could be included as well. Brett, did you have something you wanted to add on that topic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a supplier, don't be afraid to have these conversations with the companies you're working with. And also think of ways that different services you offer might help to push forward those companies' goals. So, for example, if they're looking for more diverse franchisees that they want to bring in, if you're a media company, maybe that means helping change things in their websites to have more inclusive language. Maybe that means finding them PR opportunities to talk about some of these issues. It's sort of that, you know, help them build it and the people will come mentality. But don't shy away from having those conversations and asking if you can help them move those goals forward.
Yep, that's great. I'm looking at questions here. Monica from BizCom, which is our PR agency, says, we help promote, publicize, pitch the creation of those diversity councils and efforts. We did do that. We did a PR campaign on the Diversity Inclusion Council, and I think it made the conversation easier. I will say it maybe didn't with some candidates, to Paul's point, but if those are folks that aren't comfortable in that environment, then that's not good. But I think it's becoming a big deal. Even the private equity world, we heard from our owners, are saying that this is becoming more and more important. And I think it adds value to the company as well. And I think that that's well said. Let me see here. Any other?
Can I throw something out, Mark?
Oh, sorry, Paul. Go ahead. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll do is I'll reach out to Ursa Jackson, who is the chair of the Diversity Institute, and she's on the executive committee. And I'll have Ursa give me maybe some potential language that the Black Leadership Council has pulled together to provide for franchisors to use in job postings, things like that.
And I can send you what we did, which Ursula worked with us on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So Mark, I'd like to hop in here too, because we've had this conversation on Clubhouse a lot. Like, our company is in New Hampshire, and it's very hard for us to strategically bring in a diverse team with 12 people on it, but it is important to us. So we focus on the things that we can as far as gender and age and people of color. But when I've asked this question, like, how can we help be allies and support these conversations? And it has been brought up, like what Patty said, as far as things you can ask your vendors, things you can ask your partners or your clients, and pointing out opportunities on their website to make sure that they're telling an inclusive story, that everyone is welcome here, everyone is safe. It might be something great to do with the Diversity Council and the Women's Franchise Committee and the Pride Council to put together those questions that you can ask, or those tips, like Patty shared in her post, like give people tactical things that they can talk about, because I think this conversation's been great, but it is probably 10 light years ahead of where most franchise systems are at. And they really need to just start with like, how can we make changes today that are within our power, but then also striving to get to that place where everybody's thinking about everyone and having uncomfortable conversations and being in a comfortable space where they can bring up when someone's used the wrong term or said the wrong thing, and accepting that graciously and changing the behavior, because that's where I'm at. Like, I want to do all these things, but if I had a list of stuff, I would love to share that with others and make sure that we're doing what we can here, where we're geographically bound to some limitations.
I love that. I think you're right. It opens up a conversation. I was surprised as we built the council and we realized we have nothing related to diversity in our job hiring. So if we're not asking for it when we're hiring people, then we're not going to invite people to make sure that they feel this is great. So I'd love to see that. And I know Ursula would work on that as well. So what a great idea to come up with some questions. So thank you, Michelle. I think we're going to wrap up. And I think in wrap up, I'm just going to ask everybody, since we don't have any other questions, just to give us a few quick wrap up thoughts. And then we're going to play a video, and I'll share a little intro to that video before we wrap up. But okay, Paul, go ahead.
One thing I do want to say, one of the things that I am working on right now, again, I've actually talked to Ursa from the Diversity Council to make sure that this is something that they might want to co-produce. But talking to Rob Jones, I don't know if any of you have heard of Rob Jones. He's the founder of the Fluid Foundation, on doing some presentations. He's worked with franchisors before on gender fluidity, sensitivity training, and everything that you can be doing as a brand to improve that. And one of the, the big pitch that he is that 60% of Gen Zers will not work for a company that isn't sensitive to gender fluidity. And we all know that one of our biggest challenges right now is the labor market. And so excluding a behemoth amount of people is probably not a wise thing. So I'm going to talk to him about maybe doing a training webinar for one of our next webinars, and then seeing if I can play the powers that be, Ricky, up at the IFA to get him to actually do some workshops, some training workshops like he's done for Papa John's and some other companies at convention next year. So
awesome. Thank you, Paul. Great. Patty, any closing thoughts?
I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined. Excited to just continue these conversations and provide as much just education as we can around what brands and different vendors, suppliers, franchisees can be doing to bring light to more and more diversity. So super happy that you all were here. Like we said, it'll be recorded so you all can share the conversation if you'd like. And then Michelle mentioned, but I just wrote a quick article on Pride Month and really easy things that companies can do if they want to show up this month. So feel free to check that out. It's on LinkedIn, and that's all I got. Thanks so much.
I know Paul gave his contact information. Patty, are you comfortable sharing yours if anybody wants to reach out?
Yeah, of course. On LinkedIn, I'm just Patty Rother. I think I'm one of the only Patties in franchising, so it should be easy to find me. And then my email is just Patty, P-A-T-T-I @friospops.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're thrilled to have you, and great contribution. Brett, any final words, and share your contact information?
Yeah, I think in closing, my big things are just some words of encouragement. This stuff is hard and it takes time. And one of the biggest thing I've seen is it just starts with a couple people that are passionate about it, that will keep working towards this, that slowly start bringing other people in. Don't be discouraged. It's also a lot of education, so don't be afraid to apologize when you're wrong. Be open to learning things. And no, like I said, it snowballs. This takes a lot of time. This isn't going to happen overnight. Michelle, you mentioned, places that we still got a long way to go, and that's everywhere. It's not just one company or a few companies. It's our country, our world. So don't just be discouraged. Always be open to education. In case you couldn't tell, this is something I'm really passionate about. Same with branding. So if anyone has questions specific to your particular business or industry, please feel free. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll talk your ear off over a Zoom call. My email is just B and then my last name Larimer@skyhawks.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you guys for showing up today. Step in the right
Thank
direction.
you, Brett. It's been amazing. So again, my name is Mark Jameson. You can email me at mark.jameson, Jameson @propelledbrands.com, or find me on LinkedIn. The video we're going to show to wrap up, and I think we'll end with this, was done by one of our franchisees who's actually on here, Carmen Diaz, who's on our Diversity and Inclusion Council. Their local chamber did this amazing video that sort of took signage, and we're in the sign business, so it was easy for us to do, and really told a story of how people felt. And it was not just about LGBTQ, it was about being a working father and all different things. And I just thought we captured it well. We played it at our convention. Our Diversity Inclusion Council introduced it on stage. And it is, we're going to go ahead and play that video here, and then we'll be done. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you enjoy this. We did this live at our convention. And so it was really nice to kind of share this with everybody. And we thought we would share it with you as hopefully a positive. And I got a little emotional when I watched it way to end. So thank you all. Happy Pride Month. And we'll end with the video. Ashley, thank you so much for cueing that.
We at Fast Lanes want to know why you think diversity is important.
Thank you all, everybody. Appreciate your participation, and please check out the Pride Council because we can continue to have great conversations.
At
like
Midas,
this. Happy
we
Pride.
make sure every stop on your road trip Oh, ice cream is one.
Thank you, everybody.